The Sandown Clown Encounter. The noises called to them like a warped ambulance siren echoing across the marsh. On a Tuesday in May 1973, a girl named Faye and her friend were walking through a park in the town of Sandown on the Isle of Wight when they heard the sound. Curious, they tracked across a golf course to a narrow wooden bridge over a small lake. As they approached, a blue-gloved hand emerged from the water under the bridge, clutching a book. The figure that followed looked nothing short of otherworldly, towering at nearly 7 feet, with a necklace head perched directly onto his shoulders. The figure, later dubbed the Sandown Clown, wore a patchwork of odd colors: a yellow pointed hat, a green tunic with a red collar, and a white face with triangular eyes, a square nose, and fixed yellow lips. Antenna-like slats stretched from his sleeves, and he had only 3 fingers on each hand. Startled but intrigued, the children watched him drop his book into the stream, clumsily splashing to retrieve it. Instead of fleeing, Faye and her friend watched as he hopped toward a metallic hut nearby, moving with exaggerated high-knee steps. Soon after, he re-emerged, holding a black microphone with a white cord. Another siren blared louder and sharper, prompting Faye's friend to sprint back in fear. Then, just as suddenly, the siren cut off. Through the microphone, the clown spoke as if he were right beside them. "Hello, are you still there?" Despite the somewhat frightening situation, the children edged closer, encouraged by the clown's soft, friendly voice. When they were close enough, the figure scribbled in a notebook and held it out to them. "Hello, and I am all colors. Sam," it read in a scroll that was both playful and confusing. Faye read it aloud, and Sam introduced himself, though not quite answering when asked if he was human. Instead, he ambiguously replied, quote, "Well, not really, but I am in an odd sort of way." The children's strange host LED'd them inside his hut, which had 2 levels. The lower level was decorated with blue-green wallpaper covered in dials and had simple wooden furniture, along with an electric heater. The upper level, by contrast, had metallic flooring and less headroom here. Sam demonstrated how he ate by performing a bizarre trick with a berry. He placed it in his ear, jerked his head, and made it appear in his eye before moving it to his mouth. The encounter lasted about half an hour before the children, mystified, left the hut and hurried across the golf course, telling the first passer-by they encountered about their sighting of what they called a ghost. Unconvinced, the man brushed them off, yet their story would later spark curiosity. Faye's father, skeptical at first, reported it to the British UFO Research Association, spurred by his own eerie experiences of strange lights over the marshland just 3 years prior. Was Sam a ghost, an alien, or just an eccentric prankster? Decades later, the Sandown Clown remains one of the Isle of Wight's most peculiar 2 mysteries: the smiling man on a chill. November evening in 1966, Woodrow Derenberger, a sewing machine salesman from Mineral Wells, West Virginia, found himself on an isolated stretch of highway adjusting cargo in the back of his truck. The night was cold and the road was quiet. Heading home, he didn't expect to encounter anything more than headlights until one particular set of lights slowed and hovered before him. Darren Beeger initially thought it was a patrol car, but as he got closer, he saw it was no car at all, but a strange vehicle shaped like a kerosene lamp glowing in the dark. As he watched, a door slid open and a figure emerged, a man, yet not quite like any other. His face was deeply tanned, his hair combed back in a neat dark wave. But what struck Derenberger most was the man's grin, wide and frozen, paired with his odd stance, arms folded, hands tucked under his armpits. The man did not speak aloud. Instead, he transmitted his words directly into Darren Breyer's mind. Calm, yet chilling. "Why are you frightened?" the man asked. "You mean you know harm?" Darberger, startled and confused, listened as the figure introduced himself as In Red Cold. He strangely told Derenberger that he came from a place that was less powerful than the United States. Before departing, C assured Derenberger that this would not be their last meeting and encouraged him to report the meeting to authorities. By the following day, news of the encounter exploded across West Virginia on live television. Derenberger recounted every detail, facing a panel of local officials, reporters, and even military personnel. Despite the skepticism, his story drew attention. Soon others came forward claiming to have seen a similar grinning figure or mysterious lights along the same road. Some swore they glimpsed Darren Berger's truck stopped on the highway with a man standing beside it. Just as he had described. Over the next few months, Darren Berger reported more visits from injured Cold, claiming he was now being visited, not only by Cold, but by others from Cold's supposed home planet Lanalos. As time passed, Darren Berger said he'd been transported there, where he saw a world of strange beings. 3. The Mad Gasser. September nights in Mattoon, Illinois are usually quiet, but in 1944, as World War II raged overseas, Mattoon residents began locking their doors and windows, fearing an unknown figure who seemed to slip through the shadows armed with an invisible weapon. A sweet odor was the only trace of the Mad Gasser's attacks, leaving victims stunned. Paralyzed and panicked, it began on August 31st with Urban Rafe, a sheet metal worker whose brother had recently fallen in battle. Rafe awoke in the early hours to a foul, sweet smell drifting through his open window. Soon he fell ill, his body too weak to move, and he vomited. His wife tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't carry her. They were sure they'd been poisoned, but the police found no evidence. Just a day later, another resident, Aileen Kearney, reported a similar attack home with her children, and Sister Kearney noticed the same sweet smell. Moments later, her legs went numb and she called out for help. Her sister rushed to the window just in time to catch a glimpse of a shadow slipping away. Keir's husband returned to find a stranger lurking near their house, a tall figure dressed in dark clothing and a skullcap. As fear gripped the town, the stories piled up. Residents claimed they'd been gassed in their own homes, describing symptoms of nausea, temporary paralysis, and burning throats. Munn's Journal Gazette stoked the fear, dubbing the prowler at the mad anesthetist and calling out the police for their inaction. The attacks fueled widespread terror. Locals armed themselves, vigilante groups patrolled the streets and locked windows became the rule. Chief of Police C.E. Cole, frustrated by the community's escalating panic, blamed industrial fumes. He suggested the nearby Atlas Imperial diesel engine plant was releasing carbon tetrachloride, a chemical with a sweet odor. Atlas Imperial quickly countered, saying its workers were symptom-free and its processes were safe, as the local police dismissed reports as hallucinations. The panic began to subside, yet some believe the Mad Gasser was all too real. Decades later, a local teacher, Scott Maruna, offered an alternate theory. In his view, the culprit was a Maton resident named Farley Llewellyn, an isolated eccentric figure known for chemical experiments that once rocked his neighborhood with an explosion. Maruna speculated that Llewellyn, rejected by his community, exacted his revenge through a homemade toxic gas, a possibility that no police investigation ever fully explored to this day. The Mad Gasser of M remains a mystery. Was it a case of mass hysteria, heightened by wartime anxieties, or did a troubled chemist slip undetected through the streets, preying on his neighbors? The truth is as elusive as the shadow that haunted Mattoon streets that September.